Okay, so first up, there's a question from Fanny Sulad. Question is there any lighting standards in place in Kenya? Susan, would you like to take that?
Thank you, Carol. Great question. I'm not aware of any lighting standards in Kenya. I don't think there are. I don't know if Carol would like to add on to that, given your experience in light measurement.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, from what I've seen, it's really there's no standard policies or that standards that are really there, but this is something I looked into about lighting standards in Kenya, because as I saw Bastian is a great photographer in Kenya, in Nairobi, posted below there's an increase as there's the more private housing coming up. There's an increase in lighting. Everybody just seems to be adding their own their own lighting, and which, let me read from what he said. And everyone seems to add security lights, which are mostly not pointed down, but are almost horizontally, because they have a wide angle, and a lot of that light goes up as well. So, as Susan said, I don't think there's really standards on that in regards to having it facing downward, or the proper lighting guidelines from what we have maybe from IDA, DarkSky, which is the.
Can I just add something? Can I just add? I saw Bastian's question, and it's good to see you, Bastian. I think you've attended some of our outreach events, our star safaris, as you call them. I think I went to a presentation about the conscious. Like, I think what we're trying to do is to continuously remind people about the night sky, and in a way that it's not a rule. I don't know, for anyone here who's in Kenya, when it's a rule, you're forced to do it. But when it's something you get passionate about, then you naturally just want to do it right. So yes, like any other city, there's crime in Nairobi, and people feel safe when places are lit up. But it's just, looking for organizations or partnering with organizations that are already doing it right, to make sure that the lighting places the right place and everything. And hopefully for us as a traveling telescope, we really get the buzz out about the sky. Because if you take someone outside Nairobi 1 hour away, and they're able to see more than they see in Nairobi, or further on, they're able to see more, hopefully they'll want to look at the skies there and wonder why they can't, and are conscious about how they light up the sky, and talk to people about it. Hopefully with time we'll get leaders who are able to also appreciate the sky. And I think for us, through tourism, it's a huge source of income for our country, like many other countries. And astrotourism is a way to bring in more people. We hope that then we can engage our governments in this. But it takes time, and all we can do is be hopeful. So I hope I've kind of answered or talked about what Bastian also pointed out.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, Susan. And Susan, you've been able to travel to some of these places that are right outside, or just not that very far. You mentioned an hour from the city, and you're able to get these great skies. So I see a question from Lucas Shola here, and he says, how far from the city centers are protected areas in Kenya located? Can you give us an estimate? I think you answered that, or maybe you want to add something to that.
I could add just by saying that I don't know if you have any protected dark sky areas in Kenya yet. I think that's something that DarkSky Kenya is working on, but we do naturally have areas, because of not development, that are dark, very dark. An hour from Nairobi, you get it, but it's more remote. You go to much deeper places that you get beautiful skies. I used to go to my village, home village in Western Kenya when I was younger, 20 years ago, and it was so beautiful. But now this, with development, you want electricity. Again, Baston talked about security, you get more lighting, but it's definitely not like Nairobi. So there's still places that are untapped and or are beautiful in terms of dark skies. And I think working with private organizations for tourism and explaining to them the reason, not just for their revenue, but also how you're protecting the natural environment. I think that has been talked about by both presenters is a really good way to get this more and more of these places naturally dark the way they are. So outside Nairobi, yes, you get good skies, but we can still do much more. And it's good when we have work to do. I think we have a lot of work to do in our country.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. And I see a question here directed toward myself. Thank you, Carol. Are you able to get the conservancies and national parks to assist you in education and awareness? They see a lot of visitors both from Kenya and around the world. This is from Anne Hayek in USA. Thank you, Anne, for your good question. And I'd say, as we are in the process of, this is something that can be done because we're in the process of having we've engaged with the Kenya Wildlife Conservancies Association to have them bring on board their member conservancies and lodges and wildlife refuges to on board on the IDSP program. So I believe with this certification, they'll be able, and there's also talk about having this IDSP in the badging system for Kenyan wildlife conservancy. So with these measures in place, I believe they'll be able to explain to the tourists, to their clients, to their guests, more about light pollution, and about when they have this certification, they'll be able to say, this is why we have it, this is why it's important, this is what we have. They'll be able to, basically we'll be able to spread more education and awareness. I believe that will be helpful. Something that's in place. Would you like to add something to that, Susan?
Thank you, Carol. Yes, I agree with you that having partnerships with other organizations, I think the Kenya Wildlife Conservancies Association is a good partner to come on board with the DarkSky Kenya, because again, it's a gateway to working with the government. And I think once you have support from the government, it becomes easier to, or it becomes more sustainable to have projects where we can see the benefit. Also, just in terms of education and public outreach, some of these conservancies are in areas where you invite the communities, and some of the communities are very aware of the dark sky. I think in one of in my presentation, in one of the slides, we had the Maasai community who are very connected to the dark sky, and there are other communities in Kenya. So through these organizations, you definitely can get a lot of support for DarkSky Kenya to move forward with the initiative of Dark Skies.
That's great. Thank you, Susan. And there's another question from Anna Levin. The question is, I've been enjoying the Dark Sky Origins chat and would love to hear from the presenters how they personally got interested, what sparked their interest in stars. Peter, would you like to share what sparked your interest in the stars?
Actually, sorry, I had some technical issues. I didn't hear the question. Can you repeat?
Yeah. Anne Levin is asking if the presenters they can share how they personally got interested, what sparked your interest in the stars.
Again, do you have it written? Maybe I think my
Yes.
internet connection starts to be a little bit stable. I'm really sorry. It seems that there are some technical issues.
All right, it's in the question and answer session from Anna Levin. We will circle back to you. I think I'll go first and then Susan. For myself, I remember when I was younger, back in rural Kenya, in some place called Miru, when we were growing up, there was this very good skies, and every time we'd be we'd be having maybe supper, and then you feel sleepy. You'd be told, go out and count the stars, and you will look up and see these beautiful stars, constellations, and at that point I was able to maybe at around 7 or 8 years I was able to locate Pleiades, the seven sisters, from looking at locate it in the sky from looking at the 3 stars of Orion's belt. And I know if I can follow this way, I'll be able to see that. And later on, I moved to the city with my parents, and when I was about 18, I remember I was asked by my father if I've seen the Milky Way, and I said, no, I've never seen the Milky Way. And say, you have seen the Milky Way, but maybe you've forgotten about it. And so I went back to the village and I looked at it and I was like, this has always been here, but maybe I thought it was a cloud or something. So I found this being able to reconnect with the dark skies and all these beautiful stars, they shift from the city sky to the dark skies we have back in most parts of Kenya was really inspiring for me. And I'd like for more people to be able to enjoy this. Yeah, that's from me. Susan?
Thank you, Carol. That's a beautiful story, and I'm envious that you grew up counting stars, because that's not the life. That's not what I grew up. I don't recall. There might have been more stars in Nairobi, because I do see stars in Nairobi. But as I said in my presentation, I remember the earliest memory of me and the sky was when I was about maybe 10, slightly more or less, being given an assignment by my primary school science teacher to go out and look for the plow or the Big Dipper. And the next day, my classmates came back and said they had seen it and I hadn't. And I don't remember. I know it bothered me. And then moving forward, at 22 or 21, I looked through a telescope for the first time and saw Saturn and saw the moon. And I was like, I have to share this. I have to share this. And for me, I wanted to share it with school kids. And so with time, I started doing astronomy outreach and going with the telescope. And then eventually we started the traveling telescope. So I'm envious that you got to look at the sky and remember that. Maybe I had those experiences, because when we do our outreach with the traveling telescope, I know that young kids they know the moon. Like a 2-year-old will say, oh, the moon, or you show them Mars or Venus, and when it's a crescent, and they're like, that's the moon. And perhaps I had that, but I wasn't aware. Now hopefully we can get as many people, hopefully even to count the stars like you did as a young girl.
Thank you, Susan. Peter, please.
Yeah, okay. I'm really sorry I didn't hear the question well, but I read it. My story actually comes from a very small, very early childhood. I think I was 11 and everything caused my grandmother. I was in autumn holiday in a small cottage, and what I remember today is still, she brought me a bread with honey, homemade honey. And before the dinner, she told me, let's just go out and I want to show you something. And I said, why? I have everything. I have the bread with the honey. And she just always wanted to try to somehow connect me with the nature. So this time it was about the night nature, and I didn't know what she wanted to show me, of course. And she opened the door and I saw a Big Dipper in the sky. And by the time I was not quite much excited because I just saw 7 stars and I just saw the imagination of the bread with the honey. So I wanted to enjoy the dinner. And she was a little bit upset. No, not upset. She was just disappointed that I was not anyhow inspired by the Big Dipper. So she took me back and she gave me the bread with the honey. And during that time I was eating very slowly. I was just enjoying that. She took one piece of paper on the table I was eating, and she took a small pen and she drew the 7 stars in the paper, and she connected with the lines and showing me the shape of the Big Dipper. In our religion, it's not Big Dipper, but it looks like I don't know how to say it. The thing you have a baby in, and you go with it, and so this, yeah. And I said, okay, my grandmother has just a wonderful fantasy. And when I just finished my dinner and I saw that she was still a little bit sad, I said I wanted to make her happy because she gave me the bread with the honey. So I said, her, okay, let's show me again. And she just opened the door again outside. And during the time I just was eating the bread with the honey, I spent maybe 20 minutes or something like that. And these 20 minutes were very important because the Big Dipper a little bit moved from the tree, what was visible on the horizon. And by the time, it was first time ever, I realized that the sky is not boring. Because until that, I just was thinking, okay, there are some stars and whatever. This is still the same. What is so interesting about it? But this small motion of the Big Dipper changed everything, because finally I saw that it is changing, and that brought me to be more active in astronomy, to just be interested what is in the sky, and actually more and more questions came, and most of them actually haven't been even answered until now. I don't know if I get even answers. So more question than answers I get, and that makes me more interested in the astronomy.
Thank you for the fantastic photos, by the way. They're just so beautiful.
Yeah, and a wonderful story, yes. And Levin says wonderful stories, yes. Thank you. And see, we're running almost out of time. And I saw quite there's a question here that's from Seb. I don't see the other name, they might change, sorry. And it says, as light pollution, the light pollution map, a major part of its data is generated using satellite observation of light intensity. I can't remember the discussion where it establishes that the sensitivity of the satellites in the orange wavelength. When LED appeared, many street lights were changed from the orange sodium pressure lights to white LED lights. This led to the bizarre observation that an actual increase in light pollution on the ground did not translate into an increase in lighting intensity on light pollution map. In some instances, satellite data even suggested a decline in light pollution in the affected areas, while in fact, white light pollution reached unprecedented heights. Can you explain if and how? So can you explain if and how you factor in this shortfall of light pollution map info data? If I guess that LED conversion in Kenya leads to more white light pollution as well. Does the SQM measurement gear white light glow equally to orange light glow? Great question, and comments are up there from Seb. And what I'll say from these, so the question is SQM measurements gear its white light glow equally to the orange glow. What I'll first comment on is this observation that the actual increase in white light pollution on the ground did not translate in an increase in what I noticed earlier on. I think this is expected, or maybe it's been mentioned somewhere, is from what I got, the values I got earlier on, what I was working with was the data from the light pollution map did not quite match to what was observed on the ground. The light pollution levels on the light pollution map was a bit less than what we had in the city, but this is something that I'll look more into, and maybe I'll give you maybe more answer at another session, or maybe, and yeah, and maybe we should be wrapping up. And last question from Bernadette: are satellites considered light pollution? It seems that there are limited regulations on how many satellites are being put into the atmosphere. Peter, can you take that, please?
Yeah. Okay, so there were two questions. One of them is if it's considered as a light pollution. At the moment, no, but there were some satellites which produce not their own lights, but they reflect lots of lights from the sun, and sometimes can increase a little bit, but for a very short while, the brightness in the sky. But it's not a huge light pollution like we are talking about, the pollution which somehow affects our health and environment. So this kind of light pollution is not. Among astronomers, it is different because astronomers have sensitive telescopes in many areas. One of them is infrared, one of them is radio, and any other areas. And satellites, of course, produce these type of wavelengths, heat, because they have some working heat. They also, the satellites, the Starlinks, should be for internet connection, so they work on radio. And these types of the wavelength, they are very important for astronomers on the ground-based places, ground-based observatories. And so if they get even more, which unfortunately will, more satellites, it will very damage or ruin the observation plans among the professional astronomers in this type. And unfortunately, there is no regulation because there is no law. There is no international law about regulation of the satellites. One thing here in the question is also considerable because the question also asks how many satellites are being put into the atmosphere. Well, the thing is, if I put in the core of the question, where is the edge of the atmosphere? Because some of the satellites are not in the atmosphere, they are much higher. And of course, we can still consider there is some very low density of atmosphere, but most of that not. And so the satellites are not basically in the atmosphere, but where they are on very edge, where the atmosphere somehow can affect their orbits. And here comes a problem, because if the number of the satellites will be much bigger than it's now, it's now like thousands of them, like 7,000 or something, but it's expected like 12,000 more, then even a solar storm or maybe even some problem with one of the satellite can cause some damage with another satellite, with some chain reaction. And we have to expect that these satellites will just go down in the atmosphere, and they can be a little bit dangerous. And more of them, of course, bring more danger. I cannot judge how much it can be danger because I'm not specialist in this, but I'm aware that this is not responsible behavior. This big amount of satellite should be somehow reduced or regulated, but at the moment there is no regulation, and I don't know who actually have this work to make the regulation, because there is no international organization who can care of this, unfortunately.
Thank you very much, Peter, for that. And thank you, Susan and Peter, for the wonderful presentations. And thank you, everyone, for attending this session. And I hope you gained a lot of insight and inspiration, and maybe you learned something from it. And